Good morning, everybody. Uneducated economist here. So interest rates. A lot of people said to me, like, no big deal. I'm locked in on my stuff, right? Yeah, that's probably a no big deal for you, as you monthly situation probably won't change, unless you lose your job or something like that. But believe me, interest rates are a very big deal. It is the most biggest deal there is out there, right? And what ends up happening is that we have lowered interest rates, right, to try and increase our exports, right? Try to make our dollar cheaper for people to buy, so that they can so they can buy our stuff, right? So the world revolves around the U.S. dollar. So if the U.S. dollar changes value, it's critical to the rest of the world, right? The dollar is the world trade currency. I mean, it's the world reserve currency. Sorry, guys, let me get out here on the street. So, depending on the value of the dollar, like, you hear this strong dollar, weak dollar policy, right? A lot of people don't quite understand what that means, right? And basically what it means is how expensive it is for other people, other nations, right? Other foreign nations to buy and sell the U.S. dollar. I mean, it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around to think that dollars and currencies are a commodity just like anything else, but they are. They fluctuate in price, and you can buy and sell them just like, as if it was corn and sugar, right? So what ends up happening is if you lower your interest rates, it makes your exports easier to leave the country, right? Because people can get your dollars cheaper than they could the day before. So if you can imagine somebody having to, like, say, trade 10 of their dollars over for one American dollar, right? But then we lower our interest rates, right? Causing our dollar to get a little weaker. And next thing you know, this guy, he either has to put up like $9 for one US dollar, right? So all of a sudden, like, things just got really cheap for him, right? He doesn't have to pay $10 for the dollar. He only has to pay $9 for the dollar. Right? Well, this has been going on for like 10 years now, okay? Until just recently, when they started raising interest rates. And now all of a sudden, these people who have gotten accustomed to getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper dollars now have to pay more to get their dollars, and they can't afford it, right? Because, once you raise your standard of living to a certain level, you can't afford to go backwards, right? See, nobody takes into account that, like, as they start making more money, they get nicer cars, they move into nicer places, they buy nicer stuff, and they never have any, like, reserves, right? Because nobody lives that way, right? Everybody, like, you get a better job, you buy nicer stuff. It's the same for everybody, even nations, right? So as these interest rates rise, it's going to make our exports more expensive, right? People aren't going to want to buy our stuff. It's not that they don't want to buy it. It's just they won't be able to afford it, right? They can't buy it. So this is the currency wars, okay? So what ends up happening is to try and compete with this is you start insisting on tariffs, right? You start putting the tariffs on the goods that are coming in, right? Make them more expensive so that people would want to buy, keep Americans buying less of those and more of the domestic stuff. And it doesn't really work. And I mean, it does work on paper for a minute, and it does in reality out there, because it kind of shoves some numbers around. But it doesn't really work. It doesn't work in reality in the end, because this is what ends up happening. Is, like, take for example the cedar prices that happened here just recently from Canada, right? So Canada had a softwood tariff put on them, right? And it was like 30%. I don't think it quite got that high. I think it was more like 20-something%. But it doesn't matter. We still needed to buy the cedar, right? I mean, the homes were needing to be built. The cedar needed to be purchased. It was going to come in no matter what, and we were going to pay the price for it. Now, they say this is a tax on Canada, but it wasn't, because Canada, all they did is just take that 20% tariff, dropped it to their bottom line, and put a markup on it, right? We got the price in, now this is how much it costs because of the tariffs, and we put our markup on it. We didn't like keep our prices the same or anything like that. I mean, there was a couple of people who had some like quotes out there that we had to honor, but that was it. I mean, everybody who was buying brand new boards, they were paying a higher price for on a margin that was due to a tariff that was put on Canada that ended up costing the Americans. That's all it is, right? It's a tariff. A tariff on a foreign country is a tax on Americans. People do not get that, okay? I mean, I don't know how else to kind of explain that, but that's exactly what happened. Canada got a tariff put on them. They took that tariff, put it on their bottom line, put a margin on it, sent it over to America. America went, holy crap, there's a big bill for it. We bought the material because we had to buy it anyway. We put our margin on it and sold it to you. Okay? You paid for it. You the American people, pay for it. Right, I pay for it. I pay on whatever I buy. You know, it's ridiculous. I mean, they look great on paper because what it did, like, you know, a bunch of cedar mills and people who are here domestically had a boost. Right, all of a sudden these mills fired up because they needed the lumber. Right, all of a sudden there was a call for it. There was lumber actually coming in from Alaska, some Alaskan yellow cedar, if you can believe that. So yeah, it did work. It opened up domestic mills and brought in brought in cedar from places that we had never seen it come from before. But that's beside the point. That was very minimal. You know, it was just a little bit. Yeah, it did occur, yes. But how effective was it? Probably pretty short-lived, considering that everybody's paying an arm and a leg for their cedar now. You know. Anyway. So my prediction on what's going to happen next year. So tariffs are probably going to continue. The trade wars are probably going to escalate, right? Was it Gerald Celente? Yeah, Gerald Celente. He's really good at talking about this stuff. Anyway, I haven't listened to him in quite a while, but he used to talk about trade wars currency wars lead to trade wars, which lead to real wars, right? And so that's where we're headed right now. We've gone through the currency wars, which are still, I mean, they're hot and heavy just as much as they ever were, into the trade wars now. Once these shipping channels start getting fought for, right? Once, like, you know, somebody says, okay, that's it. The oil from Saudi Arabia that used to travel to America is now traveling to China. And we're like trying to protect that channel with we're going to be like, well, no, if you're sending it to China, we're not going to allow that. You have to send it to America. Or China will be like, well, no, never mind. We'll take over the protection of the shipping channels, so get the hell out of here. Currency wars lead to trade wars, lead to real wars.